My name is Emily Ross. I'm 17, a senior at Westwood High, and I thought my biggest worry this week would be prom dress shopping. I never planned to become a teacher, not even for a minute, let alone a whole day. But on that cold Monday morning, everything changed. Mrs. Hammond, our substitute coordinator, rushed into our homeroom looking flustered. "We have a serious situation," she said. "Miss Tyler called in sick. No backup." Everyone started whispering, "No teacher? Free period?" But then Mrs. Hammond looked directly at me and said, "Emily, principal needs you in the office now." I walked the hallway, heart racing. Why me? Did someone snitch on me? Was this about the paintball prank on the football bleachers last Friday? Principal Green looked calm but serious. "Emily, we need a favor. You're top of your class, responsible, and good with people. Will you teach 7th grade English today?" I laughed nervously. "You're joking, right?" "No," he said. "It's only for one day. Just babysit them. Go through the lesson plan. You'll be helping the whole school." Before I could answer, he handed me a lanyard. It had my name on it. Underneath, temporary staff language arts. I stared at it, stunned. I stood outside room 117, the 7th grade English classroom. I could hear chaos inside. Shouting, laughter, someone banging on a desk. This was real. I was the teacher. I took a deep breath and opened the door. 30 middle schoolers turned to look at me. Some curious, some amused. One kid threw a paper airplane. "Hey, I'm Miss Roswell for today." My voice cracked. The class erupted in chatter. I realized then, they were going to eat me alive unless I acted fast. I walked to the teacher's desk, trying to appear confident. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the lesson plan binder. The room was still buzzing. "All right, settle down," I said, louder than I intended. A few kids actually paused. One boy in the front row whispered, "She's not even a real teacher." I smiled tightly and wrote my name on the board. "Miss Ross today only." Then added, "The sooner we work, the sooner we're free." Silence followed. Their textbook was Elements of Fiction. Today's assignment, read a short story and answer 5 questions. I asked for volunteers. Only one brave hand went up. A shy girl named Mia read the opening paragraph. Her voice quivered, but she didn't stop. The class listened. I gave her a thumbs up after. Some boys in the back started whispering and giggling. I asked them to stop. "Why should we listen to you?" one said. My cheeks flushed instantly. I didn't shout. I walked over, placed my hand on the desk, and said, "Because I'm the only one standing between you and detention today." It worked. The boy leaned back and muttered, "Okay, okay." The rest of the class giggled nervously but opened their books. I felt like a tiny champion. Halfway through the class, I realized I was actually enjoying it. I wasn't just filling in, I was teaching. And a few of them were learning. At the bell, kids rushed out. Some muttered thanks on the way. A girl handed me a folded note that said, "You should be a real teacher." I had no time to reflect. Next period was already waiting. 6th grade. As I entered the room, I heard someone shout, "We have a student teacher." I grinned. "Technically, I'm your teacher for the day." One boy fake snored. A girl stared wide-eyed. I stepped to the front and told them to sit. This group was wilder. They kept interrupting, making noises, bouncing in seats. I remembered something from psychology class. Controlled chaos is still control. So I adapted. We played a word game using vocabulary flashcards. Whoever defined the word fastest won candy. Suddenly, they cared. The competition turned the classroom into a learning zone. One boy named Trevor kept winning. "You're like fun and stuff," he said with a smirk. "Way better than Mrs. Keene." I smiled. Don't let her hear that. As the period ended, the students lined up noisily. A few high-fived me on the way out. I took a deep breath. 2 classes down. Lunch break. I sat alone in the teacher's lounge, eating a cold sandwich. A real teacher named Mr. Hayes walked in and gave me a nod. "You're the kid covering for Tyler?" he asked. I nodded. "Brave," he said. "Middle schoolers are wolves." I laughed nervously, realizing he wasn't entirely joking. I asked him if it always felt like this, tense, fast, and oddly meaningful. He replied, "Every day. But when it clicks, it's magic." I remembered Mia reading. The bell rang again. Time for period 3. I stood, fixed my badge, and walked down the hall. Part of me already felt like I belonged. Period 3 was 8th grade writing, a tougher crowd. When I entered, They barely acknowledged me. I had to clap twice just to get their attention. I know I'm not your usual teacher, I began, but I'm here, and I'm not going away. Let's try not to make this terrible, okay? That got a few smirks. I passed out writing prompts. Write a story about someone who wakes up in someone else's life. Their eyes lit up. A boy named Sean raised his hand. Can it be dark? I nodded. As long as it's thoughtful. He immediately began writing with wild enthusiasm. Watching them write, silently focused, gave me a weird satisfaction. They were creating something, and I wasn't just a babysitter, I had actually inspired it. One girl turned in her page early. It was about a dog trapped in a human's body. Weird, funny, sad. I praised her creativity. I walked around, checking progress. Some students hid doodles instead of writing. I didn't scold. I knelt beside them and asked what story they wished to tell. That worked. They slowly started typing or scribbling. My patience was my power. I remembered what Mr. Hayes said about when it clicks. This was clicking. When the bell rang, many lingered. Can we finish these tomorrow? Someone asked. Not my call, I said. But if I were your teacher, absolutely. Back in the hallway, I bumped into Principal Green. How's it going? He asked. I haven't quit yet, I joked. He smiled. You're doing better than most subs. Fourth period was math, my weakest subject. The board already had a lesson plan. I took a breath, prayed no one would ask hard questions. It was fractions and word problems. I read straight from the teacher's notes. The class was polite but clearly bored. One girl was already dozing. I decided to turn it into a challenge. Whoever solves these 3 problems fastest gets a snack. Heads lifted. Suddenly, math wasn't so boring. A boy named Jordan dominated the first 2 problems. Others followed. I passed out granola bars and told them, you just did math, and it didn't kill you. They laughed. It felt good. I didn't know all the answers, but I wasn't afraid to admit it. Somehow, that made them trust me more. As the class ended, one boy said, you're nicer than Mr. Walters. He throws markers. I laughed, unsure if it was a joke or a warning. Between classes, I checked my phone. 17 messages from my friends asking, how's your fake teaching job? I smiled and replied, it's not fake. It's wild. Next was science. I was dreading it, but the lesson was a video about ecosystems. I dimmed the lights, pressed play, and let David Attenborough take over. Even with the video, they asked questions, good ones. I looked answers up on my phone, then explained in simple terms. They actually appreciated the honesty. One student asked, why are you doing this? I paused. Because no one else could today. And maybe, because I kind of wanted to see if I could. When the science video ended, I gave them a mini quiz. No pressure, just fun. Whoever gets 3 right answers gets a sticker. Strangely, they loved it. One boy traded a sticker for a fruit snack. Another stuck it to his forehead. They laughed together. Not at me, but with me. That felt different. At the end of class, a girl whispered, you're the best sub we've had. I smiled. That compliment hit harder than any grade or award ever had. Period 6 was art. Thank God. I needed calm. The room smelled like paint and glue. The assignment was to sketch something from their imagination. Some drew dragons, others cities in the sky. One student drew a girl standing in front of a chalkboard. I looked closer. It was me. I pointed to it and asked, is that supposed to be me? The boy nodded. You looked super scared this morning. Now you look cool. His honesty stunned me. I realized they had all been watching me, reading my confidence, judging my energy. Teaching wasn't just instruction, it was performance, leadership, trust. We played soft music. I drew 2 just shapes and lines. One student peeked at my paper and whispered, you draw like a science teacher. Fair enough. The art teacher walked in midway and gave me a surprised look. Didn't expect them to be so focused, she said. What's your secret? I had none. I shrugged. Just not yelling, I guess. She chuckled. That's more than some real teachers manage. I wasn't sure if that was a compliment, but I took it. 7th period was gym. I wasn't even sure if I was allowed to lead it, but Coach Barnes tossed me a whistle and said, have at it. We played dodgeball. Total chaos. I blew the whistle way too often. At one point, 3 kids pretended to faint. I nearly lost control. Eventually, I split them into teams and turned it into a tournament. Winners advanced. Losers cheered. Somehow they respected the structure. I was barely surviving. Coach Barnes clapped from the bleachers. "You've got grit, kid." I was sweating through my shirt, but I grinned back. Grit felt like a badge of honor. As I picked up scattered balls, one kid said, "You know, for a teacher, you're not bad at sports." I said, "For a student, neither are you." Back in the hallway, my legs ached. I leaned against a locker, realizing how little teachers got to rest. How did they do this every day? Eighth and final period, history, a subject I actually loved. The lesson plan covered civil rights. I decided to go off script and ask deeper questions. "Have you ever seen injustice at school?" I asked. Hands slowly rose. Kids shared real stories: bullying, unfair grading, being ignored. The room grew quiet and brave. We didn't finish the chapter. Instead, we discussed empathy, courage, and change. I never expected a 7th grade classroom to teach me so much about humanity. When the final bell rang, they didn't rush out. A few stayed to help clean. One boy said, "You're not like the others. You actually listened to us." As the hallway emptied, I walked slowly back to the main office. The school felt quieter now, like it had exhaled after a long, chaotic breath. Principal Green was waiting. "How'd it go?" he asked. "Did I survive?" I replied. He laughed. "Barely," he said, "but the staff already wants you back tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" I blinked. "It was only supposed to be today." He smiled. "Miss Tyler's out all week." My heart raced, but strangely, I didn't hate the idea. I handed him the borrowed lanyard. "Temporary staff," it read. For just 24 hours, I'd crossed the line between student and teacher, and it changed me. I walked home that afternoon with sore feet and a head full of thoughts. Was this just a favor, or had I found something I loved? My mom was waiting in the kitchen, confused by my exhausted expression. "Rough day?" she asked. I collapsed on a chair and whispered, "You have no idea." Over dinner, I told her everything: every class, every awkward moment, and every small victory. By the end, she was smiling. "You sound like a teacher." I stayed up late reviewing the next day's lesson plans. I wasn't assigned anything officially, but I felt responsible. The kids deserved more than just filler. At midnight, I caught myself redrawing the classroom seating chart. Why? Because I noticed who couldn't focus next to who. I was actually planning, like a teacher. The next morning, I wore a blazer over my usual jeans. I wanted to look confident, calm, but inside, I was just as nervous as before. Back at school, I was greeted by a few smiles. "Hey, it's Miss Ross again," someone shouted. Another added, "We were hoping you'd come back." This time, I brought my own whiteboard markers and index cards. It was silly, but I wanted to feel like I truly belonged in that role. During English, I paired students into debate teams. Topic: should school uniforms be mandatory? The energy was electric. Even the shy ones found reasons to argue. One student said, "Miss Ross, you should run for principal." I laughed and told him, "Let's survive this period first." He grinned and raised his notebook. In math, I used a pizza analogy to teach fractions. If I take one slice from an 8-slice pizza, I drew it. They actually paid attention. At lunch, I sat with 3 teachers. Mr. Hayes asked, "So, are we stealing you from senior year?" I smiled. "Not yet, but never say never." They offered advice how to balance classroom energy, when to speak up, when to wait. Their words felt like gold, passed between people who'd earned their wisdom. During science, a girl who never spoke raised her hand. "Can I lead the experiment?" I said yes. She glowed with pride, holding the beaker steady. As students left the class, she stayed behind. "Thanks for trusting me," she said. I replied, "You didn't need trust. You needed a chance." Her eyes sparkled. Walking home that evening, I didn't feel like a student anymore. I felt something else entirely, someone with purpose. Maybe that's what being a teacher really meant. The third morning, I woke up before my alarm. No hesitation, no panic. I had entered a rhythm. My nerves had turned into motivation. I arrived 10 minutes early and set up the whiteboard. A few students peeked in the door. "She's already here," someone whispered, sounding impressed. First period was review day. I made a trivia game using vocabulary words. Each correct answer earned a point. The scoreboard turned learning into competition. Even the loud kids wanted to participate. They shouted over one another, but all with answers. When the bell rang, they begged for 5 more minutes. In history, We did a mock trial. One student acted as a historical figure accused of injustice. The others debated whether he should be forgiven. A boy who never paid attention stood and passionately defended his client. His classmates clapped. I caught myself smiling like a proud, invisible parent. After class, the boy came up to me. "That was actually fun," he said. "I didn't know I could do that." I told him, "Now you do." By lunchtime, my back ached and my throat felt dry. I sat in the lounge, sipping warm water, thinking, how do real teachers survive this? Miss Rivera, the art teacher, sat beside me. "You're doing well," she said. "They talk about you like you've been here all year." I was stunned. "They do?" I asked. She nodded. "Even the difficult ones are trying harder." That means something. I felt a rush of warmth I couldn't explain. After lunch, I had lunch duty. Supervising 200 noisy students in a cafeteria felt more like babysitting a zoo, but I handled it somehow. One boy tried sneaking snacks into his hoodie. I caught him mid-sleeve. "Trade you chips for honesty," I joked. He smiled and handed over the bag. In science, we built paper towers in groups. Their challenge was height and stability. They used tape, pencils, even water bottles as makeshift supports. When one tower collapsed, the group groaned. I said, "Failure's part of design." They rebuilt quickly, even stronger. They didn't need me, they just needed permission to keep trying. After class, the janitor smiled at me. "Kids been talking about you," he said. "Not bad talk either. That's rare." I felt proud and surprised. At my locker, a note had been slipped through the vents. It read, "Please don't leave. We learn better with you here." I stood frozen. I didn't recognize the handwriting. It could have been anyone's or everyone's. That single sentence held more weight than any grade I'd earned as a student. That night, I opened my laptop and Googled how to become a middle school teacher. I didn't hit apply yet, but I saved the link. My friends texted about graduation, prom, college apps. I replied late, my thoughts still stuck in the classroom, with 30 kids who didn't want me to leave. I lay in bed, replaying every moment of the day. The chaos, the learning, the laughter, and that note. Somehow, 24 hours had become something life-changing. The next morning, I walked into the classroom to find a drawing on the whiteboard. It showed me holding books, surrounded by smiling stick figure students. Beneath it, someone had written, "Best teacher ever, even if just for now." I laughed quietly. I didn't want to erase it, so I left it. Today's first lesson was poetry. I passed out blank sheets and said, "Write something real." No rules. A few kids groaned, but most began writing. One girl turned in a poem about her brother in the hospital. It was raw and beautiful. I read it twice before offering silent applause. We taped the best poems to the walls. Some students blushed seeing theirs displayed. Others high-fived each other like they'd just scored in a game. During math, a student said, "You're not even a math teacher, but I get this more now." I replied, "Sometimes teaching is just about trying differently." A fire drill interrupted our science experiment. We marched outside, kids joking around. One asked, "Do you still count as a student or a teacher in drills?" I smirked. "Both, I guess." Half grown up, half panicking. That got laughs. And somehow, even during a drill, I felt connected to them, not above, but among. Back inside, we finished the experiment with melted crayons and heat lamps. It was messy but fun. I reminded myself, learning doesn't always look clean. Later, a student named Casey stayed behind. "I don't talk much," he said, "but you're the only teacher who knows my name." That stayed with me. I began writing names on sticky notes, memorizing faces, desks, habits. If I was going to be here even temporarily, I owed them more than just lessons. During recess duty, kids asked if I'd join a Foursquare game. I played barefoot, laughing hard when I lost. They called me Coach Ross by the end. Back in the lounge, Miss Rivera said, "You know, you've got them eating out of your hand." I smiled. "It's because I let them lead sometimes." She nodded. "That's what most teachers forget. It's not about control, it's about connection." Her words echoed in my head the rest of the afternoon. The principal called me in after 8th period. "Miss Tyler's back Monday," he said. My stomach sank. I wasn't ready to give this up yet. "I understand," I said, hiding my disappointment. "It's been an amazing week." He leaned forward. "You ever think about teaching, for real?" I blinked. "I'm thinking about it now." As I left his office, students passed in the hallway. One waved. Another whispered, "Don't go." I smiled, but my heart felt strangely heavy. At home, I unpacked my backpack slowly. Notebooks, lesson plans, a coffee-stained name tag. Each item now felt like evidence of something important, something worth keeping. Mom noticed the silence. "Rough day?" she asked. I shook my head. "Actually, one of the best. Just don't know how to stop missing it." That night, I didn't scroll social media or binge shows. I opened a blank document and began typing. Lesson ideas, future classrooms. I wasn't done yet. The next morning, the building felt different. I knew it was my final day, but everything felt strangely familiar now, like a second home I hadn't expected. Kids greeted me more loudly than usual. "It's your last day?" someone asked. I nodded. "Make it a good one," they said. My heart tightened a little. In English class, we wrote goodbye letters, only the twist was, they couldn't be sad. They had to focus on one thing they learned this week. One letter read, "I learned I don't hate reading when it's with you." Another said, "You helped me feel smart." I forgot what that felt like. I hung their letters on the board in a heart shape. One student asked, "Why are you doing that?" I answered, "So I don't forget any of you." In history, I let them act out scenes from the civil rights movement. They took it seriously, in the best way. They wanted to understand. One boy narrated Rosa Parks' story with such emotion that even I got chills. "Do you think we'd have been brave back then?" someone asked. "You're brave now," I replied. The lunchroom was full of whispers. Last day, I kept hearing. A group of sixth graders made me a card with doodles and glitter glue. It said, "Miss Ross, you're the reason we stopped faking headaches to leave class." I laughed so hard I cried. Even the glitter made me smile. After lunch, a student gave me a friendship bracelet. "It's not perfect," she said. "Neither am I replied. But both of us showed up every day. During gym, the kids organized a surprise dodgeball match against me. I dodged two balls, caught one, and then immediately got hit in the shoulder hard. I laughed and bowed out dramatically. "I accept defeat," I said. They chanted, "Miss Ross, Miss Ross," like I'd won gold instead of getting eliminated. Back in science, I let them create lava lamps with oil, water, and food coloring. The room looked like a rainbow exploded, but everyone was engaged. One kid whispered, "Miss Tyler never lets us do stuff like this." I smiled. "That's because I only have today. I'm going to make it count." In art class, I joined them in drawing. One student said, "You never act like you're better than us." I replied, "That's because I'm still learning too." Miss Rivera gave me a real goodbye hug. "You have it," she said, "whatever that it is." I didn't reply. I was too choked up. Final period. The students were quieter than usual. I played soft music and passed around reflection sheets. "Tell me one thing you won't forget," I said. Answers varied: fun lessons, classroom games, the time she slipped on a marker cap. But most wrote something about feeling seen, feeling capable, feeling safe with me. When the last bell rang, I stood at the door like always. But this time, they hugged me, one after another, even the shy ones. After the room was empty, I looked around one last time. The board was covered in notes. The air still echoed with laughter. I didn't want to leave. I sat alone at the teacher's desk, my fingers tracing the carved initials left by students over the years. It felt like I was part of history now. The intercom crackled. "Miss Ross, please come to the office." My heart raced. Had something gone wrong? I gathered my bag, unsure of what to expect. When I opened the office door, the staff stood clapping. Principal Carter handed me a certificate. "Honorary Teacher of the Week," it read. I nearly cried. He added, "This was supposed to be temporary, but your impact wasn't. If you ever want a real teaching job, we'd love to have you." I couldn't speak for a moment. I looked around at their faces, some smiling, some teary-eyed. I managed a whisper, "Thank you for believing in me." As I walked out of the building, students from earlier grades waved from their buses. One held a sign, "We'll miss you, Miss R." My chest hurt. The sun was setting. I stood at the school gate for a moment, letting it all settle in. A part of me didn't want to leave. Back home, my parents asked how the last day went. I showed them the card, the bracelet, the certificate. They exchanged a proud glance I won't forget. That night, I lay in bed replaying every moment. Not just from today, but the whole week. The doubts, the laughter, the chaos. It felt magical. My phone buzzed. Miss Rivera had texted, "You've got something rare. Don't waste it. The world needs teachers like you." I saved the message permanently. I couldn't sleep. I opened my laptop and began searching. How to get a teaching credential. online teaching programs, how to become a certified teacher in USA. The idea didn't scare me anymore. It thrilled me. For the first time, I felt like I knew what I wanted and that I was good at it. The next morning, I returned to my college with a spark in my step. My roommate noticed. "What happened to you?" she asked. Everything, I said, smiling. In my media studies class, I raised my hand for the first time in weeks. The professor looked surprised. I offered an idea confidently. It felt natural. After class, I went to the academic office. "Can I talk to someone about switching majors?" I asked. The receptionist smiled. "We've got just the person." I sat down with an advisor. "I want to become a teacher," I said. She nodded, clicking away at her keyboard. "Let's make that happen." That week, I officially switched majors to education. It felt like I had finally stepped onto the right path after walking through a foggy maze. I emailed Miss Rivera. Subject: guess what? Body. I changed my major. "I'm going to become a real teacher." She replied instantly. "Knew you would. Proud of you." I kept the bracelet on my wrist every day. It reminded me that small things matter. One kind word, one fun lesson, one adult who sees a child. I wasn't a full-time teacher yet, but I felt like one in my heart. And I knew someday soon, I'd return not as a guest, but for good. A few weeks into my new major, I attended my first education seminar. Sitting among aspiring teachers felt surreal, like I was finally in the right place. One professor shared, "Teaching isn't about knowing everything, it's about showing kids they matter." That sentence stuck with me longer than any textbook or lecture ever could. I started volunteering at a local after-school program. The moment I walked into the classroom, a little boy ran up and hugged my leg. "You're nice." We worked on art projects that day. Crayons, glue, chaos everywhere, but when a girl said, "I drew you," and showed me a stick figure with a smile, I melted. After the session, one of the full-time staff pulled me aside. "You've got the kind of patience you can't teach. Keep coming back if you can." Balancing school and volunteering was hard, but I didn't care. Every moment in that classroom recharged me more than sleep or coffee ever could. At home, I made flashcards and lesson games just for fun. My roommate laughed. "You're such a nerd now." I grinned. Better a nerd than lost. One evening, I found an old journal entry I wrote during my 24-hour teaching stint. I cried reading it. That version of me had grown so much. I started a blog, 24 Hours to Forever. I wrote about each step of my journey, every doubt, joy, and kid who reminded me why I chose this. Surprisingly, people read it. Strangers messaged me, saying it made them want to teach. One said, "I thought no one like me could be a teacher until now." During winter break, I visited the school again. As I walked down the hallway, students screamed, "Miss R," and hugged me like I'd never left. Miss Rivera invited me to co-teach her third period. "You still got that spark?" she asked. "It never left," I replied. My hands were shaking from joy. As I wrote on the board, a student whispered to her friend, "She's back." Those two words made every late-night study session and coffee-fueled paper worth it. One student handed me a note after class. It read, "You make me feel smart." I kept it folded in my wallet like a secret superpower. Principal Carter met me after school. "You sure you don't want to finish your degree here? We'd make room for you." I laughed. "Not yet, sir." Leaving that day, I felt something different. It wasn't sadness, it was purpose. Like I wasn't just passing through anymore. Like I belonged in this world of chalkboards. Back at college, I joined the Future Teachers of America Club. I even led a workshop called What One Day Can Do. The room was full. Each student shared why they wanted to teach. One said, "Because no one ever saw me until my teacher did." Another said, "Because kids deserve better." I ended the workshop saying, I only taught for 24 hours, but it changed everything. Imagine what 24 years could do. The applause felt like thunder. Walking home that night, snow gently fell around me. I didn't need to know all the answers. I just needed to keep showing up, and I would. At the education fair, I handed out flyers about my blog. A woman approached and said, "Are you the 24-hour teacher?" I smiled. "That's me." She was a district administrator. "We need guest speakers like you. Come talk to our high schoolers." I nodded, nervous but thrilled. Another door was opening. At the high school, I stood before 30 restless teenagers. But the moment I said, I didn't plan to be a teacher either, they listened. I told them about the fire drill, the gum in the book, the girl who said I reminded her of her sister. They leaned in. Afterward, A tall boy in the back raised his hand. Did anyone ever tell you that you kinda saved them? I paused. One did. Backstage, the administrator said, "You have something real. Maybe you're not just meant to teach kids, you're meant to inspire teachers too." I hadn't thought that far. That night, I journaled about the talk. It felt different from teaching letters or math. It was about giving people permission to dream differently. I received emails from some of the students. One said, "I thought teachers were just tired adults, but you made it feel like a calling." I started doing more talks, podcasts, even guest blogs. Not for fame, but because I knew someone, somewhere, needed to hear what I once did. Despite all this, I still loved being in the classroom. There was nothing like hearing a child say, "Miss, I get it now," with wide eyes. During one practicum visit, I saw a student crying alone in the hallway. I sat beside her. "What's wrong?" she whispered. "Nobody listens to me." I didn't offer advice. I just listened. 10 minutes later, she looked up and said, "You're the only adult who sat." Sometimes, teaching isn't explaining, it's staying. Later, her teacher emailed me. "She hasn't spoken to anyone in weeks. Whatever you did, it mattered." I read it 3 times, trying not to cry. My professors noticed a change in me. "You've found your lane," one said. "You don't just want to pass. You want to transform." I nodded proudly. I applied for a summer teaching internship. The application asked, "Why do you want to teach?" I wrote, "Because one day, 24 hours rewrote my future." The interview panel asked, "How do you handle chaos?" I smiled. With laughter, deep breaths, and understanding that sometimes kids need hugs more than homework, I got the position. I jumped up and down in my dorm room. My roommate said, "You're gonna cry again, aren't you?" I already was. On my first day of the internship, a boy with glasses asked, "Are you new?" I nodded. "But I've done this before, just for one day." He said, "Then you must be good." We high-fived. That tiny moment was all I needed to shake off the nerves. I was ready again. During recess, I watched the kids play. The wind blew through the swings. In that moment, I felt peace, like life had finally come full circle. After recess, a child tugged on my sleeve. "Can you help me tie my shoes?" That small request reminded me how important little moments in teaching are. Back in class, one boy struggled with reading. I sat beside him, guiding each word. When he read the sentence himself, he grinned. I did it. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. He didn't need perfection, just someone patient. Teaching, I realized, was often about giving time without judgment. My mentor teacher saw me working late. "Go home," she said. I replied, "I'm planning something for tomorrow." She smiled. "You've got the bug, huh?" The next morning, I tried a group project. At first, chaos, then magic. The quietest student became the leader. The loudest learned to listen. During lunch, a student shared half her sandwich with another who forgot his. I didn't teach that, but I witnessed kindness, and it meant everything. A parent came in to thank me. "He talks about you every day. He wants to be a teacher now." I choked up. "Really?" I wrote in my journal. "It's not about 24 hours anymore. It's about what we do with every hour, every student, every choice we make." On a field trip, the bus broke down. The kids panicked. I led a sing-along to calm them. Laughter erupted. Crisis turned into memory. The bus driver said, "You kept them calm better than most teachers I know." I smiled. Maybe I wasn't just pretending to be one anymore. One boy asked, "Miss, are you gonna be here forever?" I hesitated. "I hope I'll be where I'm needed." He replied, "Then maybe you'll stay, back at the university." My professor handed me a sealed letter. "Open it when you're ready," she said. It sat untouched on my desk. I finally opened it one evening. It was a recommendation letter for a national teaching award. My name on it felt surreal. I cried. The letter read, "She carries heart into every room. A born educator." I clutched it tightly, realizing someone truly saw the fire within me. When I told my parents, they were stunned. "You never talked about teaching before," my mom said. "It found me," I replied. In one unexpected day, I started preparing for my teaching credential. Long hours, difficult exams, observation checklists, but I remembered that first chaotic day. If I survived that, I could survive anything. One afternoon, I reread the thank you notes from the students. Some misspelled, some drawings, but each one was a treasure, proof that I had mattered. My mentor invited me to co-teach a class. "You're ready," she said. I stepped in, nervous. But when the kids greeted me, I relaxed. In the middle of the lesson, A boy shouted the right answer with joy. I high-fived him. You're brilliant, I said. He beamed with pride. Later, I watched him walk to lunch with a bounce in his step. Confidence real, glowing, earn confidence. That's what I wanted to give them all. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how a single sentence could lift a child's day. Words truly held incredible power in classrooms. During an art session, I asked the kids to draw their dream job. Several drew me with a chalkboard. We want to be you. I laughed with tears in my eyes. I had never meant to be anyone's role model, but somehow, I had become one in their eyes. One girl asked, Miss, were you ever scared to speak in class? I nodded, all the time. But it gets better when you try. That little conversation sparked something. The next day, she raised her hand during reading. Her voice shook, but she finished the whole paragraph. The class applauded. On Friday, we played a math game I made myself. The room filled with energy and laughter. Learning didn't feel like a chore anymore. The principal stopped by during the activity. She stood silently at the door watching. Later she said, "That was impressive. You've got a gift." Her compliment shocked me. I doubted myself so much. But now, I started to believe I could actually do this for real someday. I received an email from the district. They wanted to feature me in the newsletter. Me, just a temporary teacher for 24 hours. Unbelievable. The feature, titled "One Day That Changed Everything," included photos of me teaching. I felt seen. My heart overflowed with unexpected pride and gratitude. A week later, I returned to the school for a surprise visit. The kids ran to me, shouting, "She's back." It was pure joy. One boy handed me a drawing. It showed me in a cape, like a superhero. "You saved our classroom," he said. My heart melted. I walked through the school halls slowly, taking it all in again. Each locker, each poster, each noise reminded me of how alive schools are. In the teacher's lounge, I met a substitute who looked overwhelmed. I sat beside her, shared tips, calmed her nerves, passing on what I'd just learned. Later, she whispered, "Thank you. I needed that." It hit me I wasn't just growing. I was helping others grow. That's what real teachers do. That evening, I sat alone in my room with old lesson plans, feedback, and notes. I created a folder labeled, "My First Classroom Journey." In that folder, I added student drawings, letters, and my own journal. It became a treasure chest of purpose, my reminder of why I was choosing this path. The university hosted a future educators panel. I was asked to speak. Nervous, I stood before the crowd and told them everything, the chaos, the magic. Afterward, a freshman came to me and said, "I wasn't sure I belonged here until today. Your story made me believe I can teach too." Walking home that night, I whispered to myself, maybe it was never just for 24 hours. Maybe it was always going to be forever. I visited my old high school to thank the teachers who inspired me. Seeing them now, I realized how their kindness had shaped my future silently. My English teacher smiled, saying, "We always knew you had it in you." I didn't believe it then, but hearing it now made me tear up. In class, we had to choose a final paper topic. I titled mine, "How One Day in a Classroom Redefined My Life's Purpose." The professor read it aloud. Classmates clapped. Some even cried. It wasn't just a story, it was a reflection of every teacher who ever made a difference. That weekend, I received an email from a teaching fellowship I hadn't applied for. Someone nominated me. They said my story was too powerful to ignore. I attended the fellowship interview with my folder. They listened quietly as I explained how 24 hours with second graders changed the direction of my life. When I was accepted, I cried. I wasn't pretending to be a teacher anymore. I was on my way to becoming one for real, for life. My first assignment was shadowing a fourth grade teacher. She welcomed me warmly and said, "I heard you already taught once. Ready to do it again?" Walking into the fourth grade room, I didn't feel nervous. I felt ready. I had something to give, and this time, I knew how to give it. We co-taught reading comprehension. I led a group of kids struggling with summarizing. I broke it down simply. By the end, they were writing confidently. During lunch, the teacher said, "You're not just good, you're natural." That compliment stayed with me longer than I expected. It erased every lingering doubt. Each afternoon, I stayed behind to grade papers, help prep lessons, and organize books. It didn't feel like extra work, it felt like home to me. On Friday, the students gave me handmade cards. One read, "You make learning feel like breathing." I had to step out to wipe my tears. That weekend, I visited a teacher supply store for the first time. Stickers, books, posters, I bought it all, dreaming of my future classroom setup. I spent hours organizing everything by theme, grade level, and color. Most people decorate rooms. I was preparing a sanctuary, my own place of magic and growth. The fellowship coordinator called and said, "We're considering fast-tracking you into an internship. Are you interested?" My voice shook. "Absolutely. Please, I'm ready." They placed me at a school known for being tough. I didn't flinch. I knew kids didn't need perfection, they needed someone to care. That I could give. The principal looked at me and said, "One day might have brought you here, but what you do from now on, that's what will define your journey." On my first day, a student threw his pencil and shouted. I didn't react harshly. I walked over, knelt, and whispered, "Are you okay?" He looked surprised. No one asks that. That was at the turning point. Not just for him, but for me too. This wasn't temporary. This was destiny. That same boy began staying after class just to talk. He didn't want to read or play, he just wanted to be heard without judgment. Slowly, he started raising his hand in class. He even helped another student with a math problem. The shift was small but deeply meaningful. During recess, another teacher said, "I've never seen him open up to anyone like that." I smiled, realizing connection mattered more than curriculum sometimes. The principal observed one of my lessons. I was nervous until the class got engaged. Even the backbenchers were participating and not out of fear. Afterward, the principal told me, "Your heart leads your teaching." That one line felt heavier than any award. It was exactly what I had hoped for. That evening, I journaled everything. The way the students smiled, their jokes, even their struggles. I never wanted to forget how it all felt. My parents visited that weekend. I showed them the student drawings, the cards, the classroom photos. My mom said, "I've never seen you this alive." My dad admitted he'd been skeptical at first, but now he saw it. My eyes didn't just shine, they burned with purpose. That moved me deeply. We went out to dinner. I shared stories about the kids, funny ones, touching ones. For the first time, they weren't just listening, they were proud. Back at school, we started a reading challenge. I created a rainbow chart on the board, and the kids lit up when their names moved forward. One student who hated reading finally finished a book. She hugged me and said, "Miss, you made me believe I could." That meant everything. Another day, a student had a meltdown. I sat with her outside the classroom, letting her cry without pushing her. Later, she thanked me quietly. I realized I was learning as much from them as they were from me. Patience, compassion, creativity all came from daily moments, not textbooks. My mentor teacher said, "You've become the teacher you needed when you were younger." That hit hard, because it was painfully, beautifully true. During a staff meeting, I was asked to share one teaching moment. I told the story of my 24-hour substitute day and how it changed everything. The room was silent when I finished. Some teachers clapped, others wiped their eyes. My story wasn't just mine, it reminded them why they started too. After the meeting, one teacher approached and said, "You helped me fall back in love with teaching." That was more meaningful than I can explain. One Friday, I stayed after school to clean up. A student left a note on my desk. "You're my favorite reason to come here." That night, I sat in my empty classroom, lights dimmed, holding that note. I didn't feel like a visitor anymore. I belonged here completely. I whispered to myself, "It started as one day. Now it's my life." And it was true, teaching wasn't a moment. It had become my mission. Monday morning, a new student joined. She was shy, clinging to her backpack like a shield. I welcomed her with a smile and gentle tone. I partnered her with the class helper. Within an hour, she was laughing at lunch. Her transition reminded me how little kindness goes a long way. That week, we studied historical heroes. I assigned each student a figure. One girl picked her grandmother and said, "She raised 7 kids alone." Their presentations were filled with emotion. I realized kids carry deep stories. All they need is a chance and a safe place to tell them. I began letting them decorate parts of the classroom. We made a wall of dreams, each student writing a dream on a star-shaped card. One student wrote, "To be a teacher like Miss, I almost cried." This wasn't just about subjects anymore, it was about inspiring futures quietly, daily. A former student dropped by. He was taller now and said, "You made school feel safe." I hadn't realized I'd left that kind of impact. The class grew more confident. They started solving problems as a team. One boy said, We don't quit, right, miss? That spirit was contagious. During a math quiz, one student struggled. I whispered, "Take your time. You've got this." He nodded and solved 3 problems correctly. Encouragement worked. That day marked my 100th day in class. I brought cupcakes. They surprised me with a handmade banner. 100 days of the best teacher ever. I took a photo with them. Their arms around me, frosting on noses. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Joy hung thick in the air. Later, a parent emailed me saying, "My child used to fake sickness. Now he wakes up excited." That validation meant more than any salary. We started a pen pal project with another school. Students exchanged letters. They learned about differences, but also about shared hopes, fears, and funny stories. One letter said, "I wish my teacher was like you." My student replied, "She'll get there." Sometimes grown-ups need time too. I smiled proudly. We prepared for a talent show. Students danced, sang, and even did magic tricks. I saw quiet kids bloom on stage like sunflowers in spring. I performed to read them a poem I wrote about them. They clapped wildly. "You're not just our teacher," one student said. "You're our biggest cheerleader." That night, I wrote in my journal, "They've changed me. I walked in to teach, but it's me who's learning every single day." I meant it deeply. A new teacher joined our school. She was nervous. I shared my 24-hour story with her. Her eyes lit up with hope and courage. She said, "You make it sound like magic." I replied, "It's not magic, it's love, patience, and showing up even when you feel unsure." Together, we formed a teacher book club. We shared classroom moments, challenges, and ideas. Suddenly, the teacher's lounge wasn't a silent place, it was alive again. The book club became more than discussions, we supported each other. When one teacher cried over a struggling student, the rest of us offered ideas, hugs, and hope. I introduced a weekly gratitude circle in my class. Each student shared one thing they were thankful for. Their answers melted my heart every time. One child said, "I'm thankful for lunch." That reminded me many of them faced silent struggles I couldn't see. I vowed never to take smiles lightly again. We started a mini garden project. Students planted seeds in cups and tracked their growth. Watching them water the plants daily showed their growing sense of responsibility. One plant didn't sprout. The student was heartbroken. Another offered to share hers. That simple gesture captured everything I hoped they'd learn about kindness. The science fair approached. I encouraged everyone to pick fun, personal projects. One student made a volcano that actually erupted. He jumped up and down with joy. I stayed late helping another group build a solar oven. When their s'mores actually melted the next day, they screamed. It worked. Science became wonder again. A student had a meltdown over a failed project. I knelt beside him and said, "Even scientists make mistakes. Let's learn from it together." We decorated the classroom door with what we love about school. One note read, "I love how Miss believes in us even when we mess up." A parent-teacher night was scheduled. I was nervous, but every parent thanked me. One mom said, "My daughter never stops talking about how you encourage her." Another father hugged me. "You saw something in my son no one else did." I held back tears. These moments were fuel on hard days. The next morning, my class surprised me with a cheer. "Mrs. the Best." They had practiced it with the music teacher. I laughed, overjoyed. We studied poetry next. Some kids groaned, but by week's end, they were writing about trees, pets, and dreams. Their words were simple, but powerful. One shy student read her poem aloud. Her voice shook, but her eyes sparkled with pride. The class clapped. She whispered, "I didn't know I could." Rain kept us indoors during recess. So, I turned the classroom into a game zone with puzzles, drawing corners, and storytelling. Laughter echoed through the walls. During a quiet moment, a student asked, "Miss, did you always want to be a teacher?" I smiled, thinking, I didn't, but now I can't imagine not. We celebrated a student's birthday. Her mom brought cupcakes. The student hugged me tightly and said, "This is the best day ever." The room felt magical. I introduced a kindness jar. Students wrote down good deeds they witnessed. At week's end, we read them aloud. Their pride in each other grew. One student wrote, "Liam gave me a pencil when I lost mine." Small things became big, and the jar reminded us of the goodness within us. As spring break approached, the class made thank you cards for staff. One janitor teared up, saying, "No one's ever done this." That moment stuck with me. Spring break began. but I couldn't stop thinking about my students. Their laughter, struggles, and progress echoed in my thoughts. I missed them more than expected. I spent the first day of break planning fun activities, crafts, science challenges, and group discussions. I wanted them to return to excitement and joy. I met with a retired teacher during break. She said, "It's not the lesson plan, it's the heart behind it." Her words stayed with me deeply. She also said burnout is real. Love them, but love yourself too, she warned. I realized I hadn't really rested, not even on break. I took a day off, walked by the beach, breathed deeply, and reminded myself, a good teacher needs peace inside to share it with others. Back from break, the students ran to me shouting, "We missed you." That moment alone made every late night and early morning worth it. We did a scavenger hunt to ease back in. Students teamed up, solved clues, and learned cooperation. One student said, "Best school day ever." A student returned with bruises. I gently asked, and she confided in me. I reported it. For the first time, I felt the weight of responsibility. Child Services thanked me. "You did the right thing." I couldn't sleep that night, thinking how teachers aren't just educators, they're lifelines. Another student wrote, "You're the safest adult I know." I cried quietly. Teaching had become something much bigger than just a job, it was a calling. We started Career Week. Students dressed up as doctors, artists, and firefighters. One came in a button-up and said, "I'm a teacher like you." I invited guest speakers. A local chef, a police officer, and even a librarian came. The kids were fascinated, inspired by real-life passion and stories. One student asked the librarian, "Do you read every book?" She laughed and said, "No, but I love that I always can." Curiosity bloomed. A student painted a picture of our classroom as their dream job. I framed it and placed it on my desk. It meant everything. We began learning about cultures around the world. Students brought snacks, wore costumes, and shared family stories. The classroom turned into a celebration of diversity. One student said, "I never thought my family was interesting until today." That comment reminded me that identity grows in environments that value it. We studied empathy through role play. Students acted out scenarios, bullying, helping, and friendship. Laughter and learning happened side by side. It was beautiful. A boy who never spoke much asked to read aloud. His voice trembled, but he kept going. When he finished, we all stood and clapped. He beamed. "No one's ever clapped for me." That moment became a turning point for him and for all of us who believed in second chances. I wrote him a note, "You're brave." He tucked it in his pocket and smiled. That small act proved how words can change lives. The school announced a poetry competition. I encouraged even the shyest students to enter. "Your voice matters," I said. That phrase became their new mantra. During lunch, a student asked, "Why are you always happy?" I replied, "Because of you." Their surprised face reminded me how love fuels joy. We created a kindness wall. Every act of kindness was written on a note. Soon, the wall overflowed, proof that compassion can grow with attention. I gave the class a gratitude journal project. Some students wrote about their pets, others thanked their parents, but many thanked their classmates. It was touching. One boy wrote, "I'm thankful for my teacher believing in me." He'd once been labeled a troublemaker. Now, he led class activities with confidence. Parent-teacher conferences began. One mother cried, "No one's ever said my daughter is smart before." Her tears showed how deeply words can hurt or heal. Another father shook my hand. He never wanted to come to school before. Now he wakes up excited. His gratitude filled me with quiet pride. I made a list of things I had learned from my students: patience, resilience, creativity, honesty. In truth, they were the ones teaching me. We held a thank you day for school staff. The janitor, lunch lady, and librarian were honored. Students made cards. Smiles lit up the whole building. A fire drill startled the students. One froze, scared from a past trauma. I held her hand and whispered, "You're safe." She nodded, trusting me. I taught a lesson on forgiveness. Students opened up about fights, family, and feelings. It was raw, real, and the most powerful discussion we'd ever had. During recess, I watched a child comfort a crying peer. "It's okay. We all mess up." That's when I knew empathy had taken root. I introduced a free expression Friday. Students could sing, dance, recite, or just talk. One girl beatboxed and surprised the whole room. Everyone cheered for her. An art project about dreams had students painting their futures. One drew herself as a pilot, another as a mom. I saw hope on every page. We read stories from different continents. One student said, "They're just like us." That spark of connection was everything. Stories build bridges where differences once stood. A snow day was announced. Kids screamed with joy, but one quietly said, "I'll miss school." That statement meant more than all the cheers combined. On the snow day, I called parents just to check in. One said, "You're the first teacher who's ever cared beyond the classroom." That stuck. We planted a class tree together, naming it Hope. Every student added a ribbon with a wish. It became a living symbol of our bond. The tree stood firm through storms and sunshine. Like the students, it grew stronger each day, rooted in kindness, watered with love, and nurtured by belief. That night, I stood by the tree alone, whispering, "Thank you," not to the school or the job, but to the children who changed my life. I arrived early and found a handmade banner on the classroom door. "Best teacher ever." My eyes filled with tears. The love felt overwhelmingly real. Each student had written me a letter. One read, "You saw me when no one else did." I hugged them one by one, holding back tears. The principal invited me into her office. "You've done more in one day than some do in years. Ever thought about teaching full-time?" I smiled softly. I walked back to class, realizing my heart had changed. This wasn't just a day anymore, it had become a purpose, a calling I never expected. The final class began. Students begged me not to leave. I said, "Even if I'm gone, everything you learned today stays with you forever." We played a goodbye game where each student shared one thing they'd remember. Their answers, your stories, the hugs, the laughter became little treasures etched in my heart. One boy handed me a friendship bracelet. "My mom made this," he said, "but I want you to have it." I tied it on my wrist instantly. The bell rang. No one moved. The hallway was silent. "Go on," I whispered. "You've got a world to change." They left one by one, waving. The classroom was empty, but the energy remained. I sat at the desk, touched each chair, and thanked every invisible memory for being part of me. The janitor peeked in. "They'll never forget you," he said. I smiled, replying, "I'll never forget them either." We nodded, both knowing something magical happened here. On the walk home, I noticed everything differently. The world felt warmer, brighter. Being a teacher for 24 hours had changed the way I saw life. That evening, I called my parents. "I think I know what I want to do now," I said. "Something with meaning, something with kids." I posted online about my experience. Comments poured in, other teachers, students, even strangers. One said, "You reminded me why I became a teacher." That meant everything. I opened the letters again, reading them slowly this time. Each word was like a seed of hope planted in me by tiny, loving hands. The next morning, I got a message from the school. "Students are asking for you. Would you consider volunteering again?" I replied with a joyful yes. I visited every week after that, tutoring, listening, laughing. The school felt like home now, and I wasn't just a guest anymore, I was part of it. Eventually, I enrolled in a teaching program. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I had 24 hours of proof that I could make a difference. Years passed, but I still wore the friendship bracelet. Faded but strong, it reminded me of that day, the day I discovered who I truly was. I walked into my own classroom for the first time as a certified teacher. Butterflies danced in my stomach, but so did a quiet, steady confidence. The bell rang. A new group of students entered. I smiled and said, "Hi, I'm your teacher. I'm so glad you're here." And I meant it. My students watched me with wide, curious eyes. They didn't know my story, but I could already see the same spark I once saw in them. I used lessons from that unforgettable day: hands-on learning, empathy, storytelling. The kids responded. They laughed, listened, asked questions. It felt like magic all over again. During parent-teacher conferences, one mother said, "He never liked school until you came." I smiled, remembering how just one teacher changed everything for me too. Years later, I met one of the original students in a bookstore. She hugged me and said, "You're the reason I became a teacher too." That night, I sat by the window, sipping tea, and reflected. I had entered that school for one day, but that one day shaped a lifetime. I wrote in my journal, "Teaching isn't a job. It's love in motion. It's choosing to believe in others even when they don't believe in themselves." When awards or praise came, I always thought of those 24 hours. Not for the recognition, but for the reminder of why I started this path. Eventually, I became the principal of that very school. Walking those halls again, I saw myself in every child still finding their place in the world. On the wall outside my office hung a photo. Volunteer Teacher of the Day Year 1. Every student who passed it knew my story began there. And so, a single day, just 24 hours, gave birth to a lifetime of meaning, purpose, and love. I didn't just teach. I lived. And I still do.